so he got ill. And I woke up in the morning and I heard this sort of ruffling around, and I thought, oh no, the dog's in the bin. And so bleary-eyed, I sort of went to the top of the stairs, and I slipped, and my feet went up in the air, and I was concentrating that much on not hitting my back. I put both my hands out behind me, and my feet slammed into the wall. Yeah, no, it's stupid, man. And then I got downstairs, like in sort of floods of tears and like in pain and stuff like that, because I thought the dog's still there. And it wasn't the dog, it was my girlfriend leaving for work. And then basically she was like, she heard the calamity, so she's phoning and phoning and phoning. And she's got a bit of a short temper, so I was like, I need to get back upstairs to answer my phone. Otherwise, she's going to be really cross. And so I had to, like, crawl upstairs and go, yes, no, I'm fine, don't come back. And I was like, yeah. And I'm like Clouseau.
But in fact, you had broken toes.
Yeah, I think I've broken all 4 except for my big toe on my right foot. But, you know, it was done a week ago or so. So it's all my toenails are purple, so it looks like I've got nail varnish on.
It's no joke. I want you to jump right into social media and the use of it today and how it's being exploited.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, well, I assume that we're going to be talking about the sort of the protestations in Turkey and Brazil, and obviously sort of the Arab Spring that was, you know, I mean, that's still going on in certain places. I'll say right from the start, my opinion is that these uprisings, I don't think they're actually as organic as they seem to be. I think they're an example of Western destabilization. There's a very good book called Confessions of an Economic Hitman, and obviously this predates sort of Twitter feeds and stuff like that, but it talks about using grassroots elements, people who are dissatisfied with the government, and just basically causing dissent and causing protests and drawing the eyes of the world to the government. And it's a way of putting pressure on them for then you to allow your economic things to come in, or even just to allow an overthrow. I mean, the thing with the Brazil, for example, Brazil, the protests are very disparate. Like there are very many people who are dissatisfied about a different number of things. And don't get me wrong, these are all legitimate, and all the people that are actually protesting are legitimate. But well, let's just take Brazil for a start. What's been going on in Brazil recently? Massive police brutality. Now, I'm not saying that this is the case, but that was starting to sort of get through to the Western media. In 2 weeks from now, nobody will hear about that because it muddies the waters. So everybody that says, oh, the police are very brutal in Brazil, people will counter that with, well, of course they are. They're having Molotov cocktails thrown at them. And therefore, it alters the narrative so that people don't you know. With Turkey, my mind with Turkey is this all seems to be sort of pressure from the West saying to Erdogan, there's someone you should be invading, really. You know, you should be in Syria, basically, doing this. So, again, in Turkey, to my mind, it's one of two things. Either it is that from the West, basically pushing, causing destabilization, causing dissent, and basically saying to the Turkish government, look, this will continue until you get on script and start doing what we tell you. Or alternatively, it's this. And I believe this might be the case in Brazil, because Brazil's got the World Cup coming up next year, and it's got the Confederations Cup as well. And Turkey's obviously... In the next couple of weeks, Turkey might well be invading Syria, providing weapons, ground troops, that sort of thing. So there is a slim possibility that this is actually fomented by the Turkish government as an excuse for them to come in very heavy-handedly and crack down on any dissidents and basically sort out any domestic problems that they have before they then go on to an international stage. And that sort of, to tie this back to social media, it reminds me very much of the London riots, where people were getting anonymous Twitter feeds, they were getting anonymous groups starting up on Facebook, and they were basically allowing people to be drawn together as a collective and then sent off to cause trouble. I mean, for example, with the London riots, there was loads and loads of Twitter feeds that people were getting saying, meet here, meet here, meet here, and nobody was ever able to quite trace where that began and who started it. And what was bizarre about the aftermath of the London riots was that people that put messages on Facebook in towns where there was no violence, there was a 15-year-old lad, and he drunkenly basically put there, yeah, it's all kicking off, we should go down to our local town centre and smash some stuff up. It's an idiotic thing to say, but it's just the sort of thing that a 15-year-old says, being bolshy and whatnot. 5 years in prison that lad got. 5 years. Like, it's outrageous. So the use of social media is very clever because it can attach people who have got very good meanings, real legitimate causes, and utilize them and get them. The other thing is it gets people fighting against one another. I mean, for example, in Brazil, there was a very peaceful anti-government protest at a particular place, and then lo and behold, 5-10 minutes later, a pro-government protest turns up, and then it starts kicking off. Very similar to the EDL and the Muslims that were sort of mysteriously meeting at exactly the same point in London. If you look from a sort of exterior point, it does not benefit any of these groups to be involved in fighting. All it does is destroy the message. There's no more coherent message. And sooner or later, people get a compassion fatigue to the point where, for example, the Daily Express, the Daily Mail's attitude will be, look at these scruffy layabouts, all just fighting and arguing amongst each other and such like that. And so it's a perception management technique. The other thing is, when you get people into large groups like that, A, it's very, very easy to coerce them into doing things, and C, a psychological process like hypnosis called de-individuation takes place, whereby people basically, it's like being in a shoal of fish. You feel protected because you feel like a larger element, but because of that, you sort of tend to go along with the group. You lose your individual perspective, and then basically, you can be coerced into all sorts of things. The genius about Twitter and stuff like that is it can be used in both ways. It can be used to foment these uprisings, and then it can be used afterwards to crack down on the people that allegedly were promoting this. And we saw something recently with the Lord McAlpine thing, where they're basically, they're offering now the legal sort of ramifications that might come from putting things on Twitter. For example, I mean, the Arab Spring, just going back to the Arab Spring, again, these were very, very much sort of the product of social media. The groups were started on Facebook, they were organized on Twitter, and then they were sold on YouTube. Now let's just look at Tunisia. What happened in Tunisia? Well, essentially, Ben Ali took the entire country's money and disappeared to Saudi Arabia. What happened in Egypt? Was that a popular people's uprising, or was it a very cleverly disguised military coup? The Muslim Brotherhood and the people like that, they weren't, but they now are under the influence of Western intelligence agencies, and this is just a destabilization for the entire region. Essentially what we're doing is we're circling Africa and we're circling Iran. I mean, days after 9/11, a report came out from America that said Somalia, Sudan, Yemen, Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq, and Iran, those 7 are going to be invaded. There's only 2 of them that we haven't invaded thus far. And that is the problem with it, basically. I mean, just going back to sort of like, social media on an individual level, it's not it's like anything, it's a tool. Like, okay, so it can be very useful. We get to chat, that's a good thing. People get to put their views up and stuff like that. But also it can be very, very damaging. I mean, I'll give you a really basic example that's just come out in the press this recently. Helen Flanagan, that terrible ditzy, calling her an actress is a bit... she's not quite an actress. She's alleged to be an actress. She basically put up a post on Twitter saying, "Oh, I'm home alone, I really don't like this, oh, it's terrible." And within half an hour, 3 men armed with knives had kicked her front door in and stolen all her jewellery. Well, people don't realise that Twitter, Facebook, YouTube and stuff like that, it's like standing on top of a flagpole and shouting at people. Like, you get this concept of Facebook parties where people have put, "Oh, my parents are away," and then they're astonished when 300 people turn up. Google Maps has got a similar thing. You go on it and you look for a pool, and basically you turn up about 2 o'clock in the afternoon because they know that they're not going to be there, but there's a pool in this person's back garden. So, these tools can be used. People are being really they're up in arms about Edward Snowden and the NSA and the fact that they're taking all your information and stuff like that. And yet, if somebody walks up to you in the street and says, "Can I have a picture of you in a bikini? Can you tell me who your boyfriend is? What's your favourite film? What's your favourite music? Where did you go to school? Where do you work? Tell me what you've ate in the past 3 weeks." You'd tell people to get lost, but that's on Facebook absolutely right now. And say people are moaning about the NSA, and you're giving out all this information anyway. The NSA is a bit of a moot point anyway, because basically that's Patriot Act, so that's been going on since 2001.